So our session today, I guess it's a view into digitalisation and the impacts that it's having in the world today, but it's also a view of what our customers are seeing and what they're doing about it. So just a little bit about us first, so it puts it in a bit of perspective. Our main business is integrating ecosystems. We do that with a methodology called IOA, Interconnection Oriented Architecture. I'll talk a bit about that later on. And we have something called Platform Equinix. That's about all the sales spiel you'll hear from me. I'm not a sales guy. So what we do, and just to put perspective around Equinix as a global entity, lots of customers. We are a carrier neutral location. We have, it's actually 650 plus cloud and IT service providers that home themselves with Equinix. And those include Facebook, Box, Amazon, etc. With our acquisition of Telecity recently, we now have 145 data centers in 40 countries, 5 of the markets. So that's us spread about the place. The only difference between the red and the blue dots, so the blue dots are where there is dense cloud ecosystems with something we call Cloud Exchange. It's a product thing, I won't go into it, but imagine that you had LAN access, security, compliance, etc., control over a cloud connection. No longer going over the public domain, this is just your private connection. So this is kind of the preface to digitalisation itself and how it came about from our view. I mean, we started out as a neutral location for networks to come together. Back in the day, in the late 90s, AT&T and all the people were saying, look, the internet lives here, customers need to come with us. And customers were saying, well, no, what if I want to change with you? Then I've got to get out of bed with you and go into cable and wireless or Verizon or whoever else. So we set up shop and brought all the carriers in. So you were seeing 1,000 plus network providers are in our data centers around the world. That gives customers the choice to say, you know what, I can just do a reverse auction one day and pick my lowest cost provider. And you don't have to invest in all that tin that they put in your data centers today as well. After all, that's an amortized cost that they've got to charge back to you, and it's not cheap. Content providers came in and said, we need the networks. If we ever want to get our messaging and content out there, we need the networks. We've got to be close to this stuff. So your Akamai's of the world came and set up shop, and they were able to distribute closer to the edge, which is us, the customers. And then ecosystems began to form. Fintech and financial services was the first. High frequency trading, the requirement to be close to the exchange itself. These were business critical systems that required low latency. So they started to form around these exchanges that are deployed in our data centers. And that's great because the cloud providers then said, these are our end state customers. We would love them to adopt our cloud. We're going to come right next to you as well. And that's kind of led us into the digitalization world in enterprise today, where enterprises say, you know what, I shouldn't be running my own data center. It's not my core business, for starters. But more importantly, I need to push things to the edge and make them useful and engaging for customers. And that's where I'm going to talk through the next few slides. We're going to talk about what it is, why it's here, and what it's doing, and a little bit about how our customers are actually going about achieving this themselves. So, transform, I heard it earlier, it's a word that just gets over-abused, but it is a function, it is a word. I don't use analogies much, but transform is here, it always will be. These are the items that are impacting, that have been impacted in our market space today. I prefer to use the Skype example of business hours. These are the meetings that you would have traveled to, but 1.6 billion hours in Skype conferencing last year. It's a massive number. That has saved probably billions of actual dollars and pounds and euros in organisations simply by not having to all get in a room, simply by not having to travel to places. We do it ourselves with our colleagues everywhere and with our customers. We just fire up a Skype session. It's easy, it's quick. And also the business-to-business acquired customers. Now, company blogs, company social media, digitalisation analysis, etc., That actually drives B2B customers into enterprises, and they do that through the web front, and that's gone up by 57% last year. It's a very impactful number. But I think that's because as consumers and CIOs and etc., we are more educated. We know how to search for these things. We don't need to be told, we don't need to be sold to. We get to a point where we think, I pretty much know what decision I'm going to make. Let me read a little bit more about it and invite these folk in. Whereas before you'd have, well, we'll remember what before looked like. Let's not go into it. So the connectivity data models, Gartner have talked about nearly 5 billion devices in IoT land coming available by 2020. The more interesting one is the mobile application spend market. This isn't just your iTunes, your Android, etc. We were with one of our customers, GE, yesterday talking around Predix Cloud and its impact on the healthcare information exchanges. They've built an open platform in Equinix called Predix, and it's a bit of an 80-20 rule for them for revenue. They're developing 20% of it, which they're calling open shop, and then 80% of it, they expect developers to use their open shop to develop things for clinicians to use, for the medical advisory to use, and to collaborate with. They actually expect developers out in the world to do more with their platform than they will ever achieve. And that's going to impact healthcare full stop, simply because we've got developers are writing algorithms to say, you know what, I'm tracking your Fitbit, you're not exercising as much today and your heartbeat's a little bit low. How about you book a trip into the doctors and see what's going on here? And there's this predictive, proactive medical examination that's going on to actually avoid you needing to go to an NHS hospital once there's a problem. It's great. But again, 80% of the organisations, the developers are expected to leverage that platform. App usage sessions. So this is your Office 365, your Google Desktop, Amazon Workplace, etc. It's gone nuts. I mean, I used to work for a large outsourcing organisation a few years back, and we were selling a virtual desktop solution built in a box in a customer's premise. It was wonderful, don't get me wrong, and it was low cost. But the requirement to have that infrastructure sat next to the application was the only thing that really mattered. If we had applications 10 miles away in their other data center, we started running into problems. And now, 2.1 trillion sessions are being run in the cloud, and the applications could sit anywhere. To be frank, I think a lot of organizations don't realize how many clouds they're using today. We do. We eat our own dog food. We have Workday for HR as a service, Salesforce, we use Box. I think we have about 15 clouds in play today. The average enterprise uses at least 4 today, at least 4. And these are things that perhaps they might have offshored before and then moved to an application base and managed more effectively. Or they might have just said, you know what, we do this job, we develop an application, here is a tool that will do 90% of it for us, and we don't have to change anything. And that 10% we'll live with. It's easier, it's cheaper, it's more affordable. And lower cost. I find cost comes up a lot. I don't know about you guys, but if it's either cost, risk, and service, they're the 3 factors that people look at. So, digitalization, it impacts a lot of companies. Here's some great names of people that have made a massive change in the marketplace. WhatsApp messaging, Uber, GE, and you think, oh, crikey, am I being impacted by this? Am I being eroded by a small platform startup? Is that a high risk for me? I don't think Kodak thought that. When the digital camera came into play. I don't think Blockbuster thought it, when Netflix was around. There's lots of examples where people didn't keep up. Unfortunately, keeping up's not enough. I'll say this, I said it again yesterday with the guys at GE. Unless you are in the moment of digital, you're never going to catch up. Unless you are actually planning to be right there, right then, and I'll give you an example later on, you're never going to catch up. There is no company that could do something today that would impact Uber. Uber are there, they're everywhere, they're doing things, they've got data, they've got people, they've got locations, they use clouds for their technology. It is pervasive. To set something up today and compete with that would be just monumentally hard. Even Tesco's, moving there online. Many organisations, have failed in their online capabilities, and Woolworths was an early sufferer of it for many other reasons as well. But we're seeing a lot more in the marketplace today as well. Unless you understand the route to omnichannel and digitisation of the product set itself, you're going to get left behind. I'm only throwing this up simply because it visualises quite well where, I guess, we as customers versus cloud service providers and network service providers, etc., meet. There is a point where it's really good to do business. In fact, by the end of this conversation, we're an interconnection company. We make business-to-business connections. I can say to you, here we are. There is a private wire to Amazon. Carry on, congratulations. By the end of this meeting, we would have done 3 or 4 more enterprise business-to-business connections. We have 177,000 cross-connects today, and that's just growing at a phenomenal pace. So that might be, and here's some named examples that we have, Bloomberg connecting to Brightroll advertisement services. We have Betchel, who use Amazon Web Services and SoftLayer. There are many customers that actually come to a single point and say, you know what, let's go do business in Equinix because it's there already. We don't have to worry about setting up our infrastructure, and companies like Microsoft, Google, etc. already invested in making that work. So we need to get organizations moving from the left to the right. We understand the flow of things that happen, but this bit here is where the business is. It's an any-to-many connectivity model. This could be security services. Security at the edge is probably the most important thing. People think about protecting the edge before working their way back. But this could be me logging into my phone to make a payment. There's a few people involved there. There's my bank, there's the owner of the security system on my phone, there's the phone provider itself, there's the point of sale. All of these things are happening at the same time, in real time. And you cannot get to that point with a siloed and fixed approach to infrastructure, approach to business, and things like this. So we need to re-architect it. And what does that mean? On the left, this is us today. We have lots of information. And we're actually putting tools in to become systems of insight so that we can understand the data we've got and make something of it. But when it comes to the core, the edge itself, we seem to be, okay, how do you consume that for me? Or as you customers, can you consume that? How can I make it easier for you to consume or be knowledgeable in the area that I'm trying to educate you? We need to flip that architecture so that the systems of engagement at the top end are meaningful. And let's think, the data sets down the bottom, there's probably a form, Mr., Mrs., Miss, etc., name, address, phone number. It's structured, you can do something with it. But a system of engagement, it might only give you somebody's phone ID, the fact that they're in Tesco's and they're in Cheapside. But what are you going to do with that? You can do something with it, especially if you're Tesco's, for example. You say, here's the offer of the day, and just send it to that device. But you need to have meaningful information in the digital economy. To make that work, I've got a global view here, but with my EMEA hat on, we've been working with a large supermarket out in Holland, in the Netherlands, sorry. And it's the same model. It's simplified for the region. I'm just visualizing it on a global scale. There's complexity in networking. We need to simplify that. And we can help, obviously. We've got some fantastic partners that do nothing but that big undersea cable to a continent. But it does a couple of things for you. It takes the data, the applications, and the services that you require to the point in time, the point and place that you need it. There's a very large Swedish supermarket chain who still do their own data centers, and that's absolutely fine. But they use Equinix, much like Facebook do, and LinkedIn, to get point of presence where it's relevant. Now, Facebook, Box, LinkedIn, Brightroll, all fantastic examples of where they do things themselves, they run their business themselves, but when it comes to actually engaging with us as consumers and users, it's not their business. They're in the information business, in the reselling, the retailing, the advertising business, but they need to get what they know out there. So they deploy in every single data center that we have just a point of presence. that hooks onto the backbone of the internet, and 100% of the routes run through our data centers anyway, so they know they have that proximity. And we'll come on to what that solves in a little bit. But what I'm seeing is actually organizations taking not just the ones that they've decided to move to cloud, but the ones that were previously legacy, and they're adopting solutions like VirtuStream, SAP HANA and people like this. And they're actually pushing them out to the edge itself. So they're moving the applications that need to be time sensitive for data analytics. They need to be real-time monitoring or real-time security. They're moving them to where it's effective, and that's the edge. And that's the edge of a secure cloud connection. And that's so. And that was. Let's go back to that. And have a sip of water. And that's important because what you can do here, if you imagine this is just an internet VPN or etc., you are at the behest of the internet. There's no quality of service on that. It's great for consumption. It's cheap. It's relatively cheap. But there's no security, added value, etc. But when you're connecting with, for example, a performance hub into Azure via ExpressRoute, you own that. That's WAN is the new LAN thing. You get this stuff. You don't have to do more with it. And all of a sudden, you go from what might be a few hundred megabits connection to the internet into 1 or 10 gigabits of dedicated connectivity between your performance hub and the cloud. So it makes a lot of sense for businesses because it solves for this. The distance itself. You cannot defeat physics. Despite certain Star Trek films flying around the sun and coming back in time, the line is the line. The financial services organisations understood this a long time back, and they obviously looked for latency improvements between London Exchange, Amsterdam, etc., Frankfurt. But as enterprises, we've not quite understood what this means for us. Well, if you shorten the distance between what you're trying to do as a business and the people you're trying to sell to, you get to start localising the traffic. So a good example is FlyDubai. Most of their customers are in Dubai, but 20% of it is rest of world. They had an awful experience with the rest of the world. And what they moved towards was a model whereby they could put local data, local application sets and web services where it mattered. So North America into Europe and Asia Pacific. And all of a sudden, they go from 130 milliseconds of delay, which is probably the point of time where I start typing ba.com, and they went down to 10 milliseconds in country. It makes a lot of difference when you can shorten the distance and localize what you're trying to do. And then you can integrate it with cloud ecosystems, because at the end of the day, do you want to manage tin? Possibly, possibly not. But what you do want to do is leverage all the good things we hear about cloud. That could be hybrid itself, or it could be pure play public. And then you can put the data where it matters. And this is where the systems of engagement come into play. I hear a lot about data lakes. I get it, that's fine. There's a purpose for a lot of those. But some of this is so transactional. And we're talking about microservices on certain data instances at that point in time in the digital moment, that data needs to be everywhere. Not everything everywhere, relevant data everywhere. So what we've done is we've combined all of this into a re-architecture at the edge that we call IOA. It's a methodology. There's products behind it. I'm not going into those. But it's a way of doing things. It focuses on people, location, clouds, and data, and the problems that you solve with those. So you get to a point where you understand which apps are business apps that stay in your own data center, comms room, whatever, which are the ones that are focused on omnichannel, digitalization, etc., and need to be more on the edge. Because once you get to the edge, all of a sudden you think, oh, you know what, all of my content delivery systems that are being sent by box, I could have a private connection to these guys. Thank you very much. Security improved, latency disappeared, manageability improved because it's more LAN extension, and bandwidth goes up. There's a great example that we did with Oracle a couple of months back. where we were using Oracle Cloud VMs to run a data set. I don't remember the numbers, but importantly, we ran it over the public internet, and then we ran it through our Cloud Exchange product, and there was a 6,000% service improvement, 700% time improvement. They went from hours of backing up this data set through Cloud VMs to minutes. So this meant they could reduce their recovery point objectives, their recovery time objectives, and indeed the number of times that they could do this backup function every day. And they did it for a third of the cost. So I guess the assumption with cloud is that yes, it's cheap, but there are hidden costs in it. You've got your data in and your data out. There's other bits and pieces. Whereas you can do a buyout option on a Cloud Exchange port, and you just own that 10 gig, and you can do whatever you want with it. So that working example, Oracle use on a regular basis, and we like to talk about it because it's real world. It's stuff that we were trying to do, and it makes it tangible. So what I want to do here is just talk you through another customer example that we had. I'm not able to mention them today, but you can imagine a distribution and logistics organisation in the refreshments industry. And I'll say no more. But their biggest challenge was that they were going through a lot of M&A activity. They had highly federated networks. They also had challenges with integration with previous organisations. And they brought a new CIO in to, I guess, help them fix this. The CIO realised that actually what they needed was a CTO. So went out to market and got a CTO in, and he went on to other things in the business. And the Chief Technology Officer said, okay, I see where we're going. I see where we've bespoked a lot of this stuff. I see where we're trying to use cloud. In this case, it was Microsoft Cloud. But what we're not doing is bringing it all together into a cohesive solution. And they said, well, okay, let's break this down. What are we trying to solve for? Well, they were trying to solve for proximity to their plants themselves. They were trying to solve to their retailers, their customers and consumers. And they were also trying to solve to the business to save costs. So we broke it down for them and said, okay, if you take it data, cloud and communications, and this is the fundamentals of an IOA node, then this is how you can do things at the least expensive route to market in each place. So what we do, with the communications hub, we shorten the distance. That's the physics piece done. We integrate with ecosystems. All of a sudden, there's all these cloud service providers that you have. And you can put your data. So we solve for adjacency, making the data relevant where it counts. I've just been given the 2-minute signal, so I just need to wrap up quickly. And I'm going to pass on that one and just come into here. So, with a way of doing things, like ITIL and TOGAF and things like this, it gives you a framework to consider. We see a lot of organisations investing more in their network architecture, their network services, and less in the actual back office and the administration and the application development side, because they know that somebody will develop a $20 app, or a $5 per user app per month model that they can consume and do 90% of the work that they're after. So they're actually focusing on improving the user experience. That does a couple of things. It makes your users happy, and it makes it adoptable. If you're waiting 130 milliseconds for a page to come up, you're not going to be happy. It's going to take you a long time to do your job. But if it's there, it's on demand, and it's in the moment, success. Also the security. We have a great working relationship with F5 and Cisco and people, and they've taught us a lot, and they're actually talking with us and companies like Facebook about the open security system, the open source security system of the future. And we've got a way of addressing that, and it's not addressing as in a solution, it's a mindset that you can get into and think, when I go down the cloud route, this is only what I need to do. This is only what I need to focus on, because there are other services that can collapse, support and simplify the rest of it. We also talk about data hubs and data fabrics. Yes, there are data lakes. Yes, there are organisations that are creating them. Healthcare Information Exchange being one of them, for example. GE Predix being another one for IoT, machine-to-machine communications. Even Vodafone and Aviva and BMW and the likes are getting together for telematics and having arguments at the moment as to who owns the data, who can resell and license that information as well. And obviously the integration, bringing it all together. It's more than just deciding that you want to not do data center anymore or not have services from here anymore and I'm going here. It's making it relevant because with my experience and where I've been to our data centers in Silicon Valley, for example, the Slough campus and Frankfurt, I like the odd tour, but I was popping around these things thinking, this is very nice, it's nice and cool in here. And the guy said to me, let's come over here. He said, that's Amazon. The latency to Amazon is less than a millisecond. That's Microsoft campus over there, 3 data centers. That's Pfizer over there, and they still long-line back. I'm thinking, with the home of the clouds impacting organizations the way it is today, having the cloud proximity to these ingress hubs or these data locations, these co-location centers, is more relevant than ever. Because you don't want to go somewhere or do something that you can't integrate with what you're trying to do. And that could be a cloud, a process people, etc. So having that frame of mind and where Equinix sits with certainly AWS and Microsoft and Google, they invest putting the points of presence with us. And we can then, we don't actually do anything with it. They tell their customers, come and meet me at Equinix. It's a great thing to have. And it's nice that certainly the cloud service providers get the reality behind shortening the distance because it makes it more consumable and the user experience a huge amount better. Happy to talk further. Obviously, there's some guys on tables 3, 4, 5 if you want to catch up with them. But thank you very much for your time today. Really do appreciate it and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.